Down there, life continues. The traffic is awful, stocks go on trading, and Star Trek is still showing.
Good day, grade 9s. Welcome to today's lesson for natural sciences. We are still continuing with term 1. This section contributes 80 marks towards your media exam, so please pay attention and take advantage of the marks because they are relatively easy to get. The topic for today's lesson is human reproduction, and the subtopic is purpose and puberty. My name is Kwanele Dlamini, and this lesson was proudly brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education. So without any waste of time, let's get right into it. So what's the point of this lesson? Why are we even learning this? What are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to accomplish? We are trying to ensure that by the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe the main purpose of reproduction. You should also be able to explain the reason for the development of secondary sexual characteristics. And lastly, you should be able to describe the changes that occur to male and female bodies during puberty. Now, for more information on this, you can refer to the grade 9 CAPS document on page 59. Let's continue. Now, let's take a step back and revisit some of the concepts that we've learned in previous grades or previous lessons because they lay a foundation for today's lesson. We are going to take it way back to grade 5. What did we learn about in grade 5? We learned about the animal skeleton. But what is an animal skeleton? You can think of a skeleton as a structural framework that supports or holds the body together. Okay? So we have two types of skeletons. Some animals have internal skeletons, which we call endoskeletons. And then other animals have an external skeleton, which we call an exoskeleton. Right. So endoskeleton is inside the body. So most animals that have an endoskeleton are referred to as vertebrate animals. What does that mean? That means that they have a backbone. Now, there's a variety of animals that fit in this category, but we are going to look at a few. The first one we're going to look at is a bird. A bird has an endoskeleton. Why? Because the bones that are holding it together are inside the body, okay? They are covered under the fur or the feathers, okay? So it's under the skin, basically. And it has a backbone, as you can see there. This is the backbone of the bird. So it is a vertebrate animal with an endoskeleton. Endo means inside, right? Another example would be a snake, okay? A snake has an endoskeleton. Why? Because the skeleton is hidden under the scales of the snake. You can't see the skeleton of a snake unless, of course, it's dead and decomposed over time, okay? Because when animals die, they decompose and all the flesh disappears and then you remain with the skeleton. Now, the most famous type of an endoskeleton will be that of a human being, okay, of humans, okay? So our skeleton, as I'm standing here, my body is supported by bones, okay? But you can't see my bones. They're inside my body. You will only be able to see them if I were to die and decompose over time, and then you will see the bones will be my remains, okay? So all of these are examples of what? Animals with an endoskeleton. Right. The other type of skeleton is called an exoskeleton. An exoskeleton is outside the body. It covers the body from the outside. It protects the fragile organs that are inside the body, but on the outside. So it comes in different shapes and forms. The very first example of an animal that has an exoskeleton would be a millipede, okay? It's also known as ishongololo in Zulu, okay? It has an exoskeleton. This is the exoskeleton, this black thing, this black shell that covers the body is called an exoskeleton because it's outside. Another example would be a snail. A snail has this fragile body covered inside this shell, okay? So even a predator that eats a snail will need to break the shell first in order to get to the snail, Right. So this is an exoskeleton because it's outside the body. It protects it from harm from the outside. Now, this one is very, very interesting. This one is a tortoise. In the case of a tortoise, we have two types of skeletons existing in one. Now, I know that can be very confusing because we often assume that a snail has an exoskeleton because of the shell that protects the body. And you would be correct if you're only looking at that. But unfortunately, a tortoise also has bones that are inside the body, like bones of the legs, the feet, bones inside the body like that. The neck has bones, the feet has bones, and the rest of the body has bones. So that part of the body it has what? It is an endoskeleton. And then this outer part is an exoskeleton. So this one is best of both worlds, both endo and exo. The exo is the shell that protects the entire body from harm. And then the endoskeleton is the bones inside the body. Okay? Right, let's move on. In grade 5, we learned about life cycles. Okay? But what is a life cycle? We can think of a life cycle as the continuation of life from generation to generation. Okay, for instance, you were born as a baby to your parents and you grew over time, and at some point you will have your own babies or your own children, and over time you will grow older and your children will have their own children, and at some point you will end up dying and your children will replace you and they will have their own children and they will die, and the cycle continues on and on forever. Okay, right, so that's what we mean by a life cycle. And in grade 7, we learned about human reproduction. Now, this is a topic that is relevant to today's lesson because we are looking at puberty. Right, so in human reproduction, we need two individuals. These two individuals must have sexual organs, okay? They must have a reproductive system from the male and a reproductive system from the female. And then these two must fuse gametes and form a zygote, which later forms a baby. Okay, so you need two of these. You need sperms from the testes of a male and you need eggs from the ovaries of a female, and these two the sperm must fertilize the egg for a baby to be formed. If fertilization doesn't occur, there won't be a baby that is formed. But you'll learn more about these in our subsequent lessons because we are going to dwell in human reproduction. Now let's continue. Let's do a baseline assessment, which is nothing but a few questions that are tailored in testing your level of understanding of the concepts that you've already learned. First question, what physical changes can you observe during puberty? Right, you can think of any physical changes that you can observe during puberty. Number 2, which gland initiates puberty? And number 3, around what age does puberty begins in boys and in girls? So you have 3 minutes to answer these 3 easy questions and your time begins now. All right, learners, welcome back. I hope you were able to answer these 3 simple questions. Right, so without any waste of time, let's talk about the answers to these questions. So what physical changes can you observe during puberty? What do you think? Anything? Yes, that is correct. The physical changes will come in different shapes and forms. In boys, there's normally a deeper voice. In girls, they start going through menstruation. You will start seeing some pubic hair in your private area, and then you will start seeing some facial hair in boys. And there's many more that you can list, okay? It's not limited to these 4 or 5 things that I stated, okay? Even pimples are more than welcome as an answer, okay? So which gland initiates puberty? Which gland causes puberty to start? Anyone? Yes, that is correct. It is the pituitary gland. So around what age does puberty begin in boys and in girls? Yes. So in girls, it begins between the ages of 8 and 13. And in boys, it begins around the ages of 9 and 14. Okay? So if you got these questions correctly, well done. And if you did not, I hope you were able to see where you went wrong, and you will get them right in your tests and your exams, okay? Let's continue. Now let's define a couple of terms that we are going to encounter in the lesson so that by the time we see them, we don't need to page towards the back of a textbook to get definitions, okay? Let's quickly just define them. The first term we're going to define is puberty. What is puberty? Puberty is the stage in the human life cycle where sexual organs mature for reproduction. Okay? So it's a stage in the human life cycle when your sexual organs will mature for reproduction. They get ready for reproduction. But that doesn't mean that you should go around making babies. Babies are expensive, okay? Right. The pituitary gland. It is a small pea-shaped gland just under the brain that releases hormones into the bloodstream. Okay, this is the gland that initiates puberty. We call it the pituitary gland, and it's located at the bottom of your brain. Testosterone. Testosterone is a male hormone which is produced in the testes. Estrogen is a female hormone which is produced in the ovaries of a female. Okay, let's continue. Now let's talk about purpose and puberty. So what is the reason for reproduction? Why do we need to reproduce? Why? Well, the main purpose of reproduction is for the gametes, which are your male sex cells and your female sex cells, to combine for the continuation of a species. Now, can you imagine a world where everyone decided they are not going to reproduce? What is going to happen to that population? It's going to get wiped out. Why? Because as we are living, we stand to die. And if there's no one to replace us when we are gone, that means our entire population is going to be wiped out, okay? And there will be no one to continue the cycle of life, okay? So that's the reason why reproduction is important, for the continuation of a species, so that when older people die and other younger people that die due to unforeseen reasons, there are other people to replace them, okay? Let's continue. The gametes are your sex cells from the male and the female sex cells, okay? We call them gametes. So there are 2 types of reproductions, okay? The first one is called asexual reproduction. The second one is called sexual reproduction. So what's the difference between these 2? In asexual reproduction, we have only one parent. So it's like one parent can have babies on their own. That's quite strange, right? Because you're expecting to have 2 parents coming together to form a baby. But in asexual reproduction, which is not common in humans. Humans don't undergo asexual reproduction, they undergo sexual reproduction. But other animals, there are certain animals that can reproduce on their own. An example would be the amoeba. So what happens with the amoeba, we have one cell that is the parent cell, and the nucleus of that cell together with the cytoplasm will split into two, forming two new cells. But what's common about those cells is that they are identical to each other. So in asexual reproduction, we have the offspring being very identical to the parent. You can't distinguish between the two, okay? So that's asexual reproduction. An amoeba is an example of an organism that undergoes asexual reproduction. It doesn't need another partner of a different sex in order to reproduce. It can reproduce on its own, okay? Right, then we have sexual reproduction. So in sexual reproduction, we have two parents, okay? We need to have two sex cells, the egg cell and the sperm cell, coming together to form a zygote, okay? So the parents have reproductive organs that make sex cells or gametes, which are also known as your sperm cell and your egg cell. The testes are produced from the male reproductive system. The sperm is produced by the testes of the male, and the egg is produced by the ovaries of the female, okay? Right, so the ovaries produce what? The egg cells. And the testes, they produce what? The sperm cells. So here we have a structure of the sperm. So this is called the head, right? And this is the middle piece. And this tiny portion here in the end is the tail. It enables it to be able to swim, okay? So this middle piece contains something called a collar, which has many mitochondria. Now, if you remember from our previous lessons when we learned about cells, what did we say was the role of the mitochondria? It is the energy powerhouse. So it produces lots of energy for this sperm, okay? Why does the sperm need energy? It must be able to swim all the way to the ovaries of a female to get the egg to fertilize and to form a zygote, which later becomes a baby, okay? So that's the purpose of these many mitochondria, to provide it with energy so that it can swim. Right, then we have an egg cell. On this egg cell, we have, okay, right, let's go back. So this is the egg cell, and this is your nucleus. This is the nucleus of the egg cell. And this is the cytoplasm. Right. And okay, let's continue. So a new life starts when an egg cell and a sperm cell join together during fertilization. And the fertilized egg cell divides to form a ball of cells, which we call a zygote. So this fertilized egg cell, after it's been fertilized by the sperm cell, it divides into many balls to form balls of cells, which are referred to as a zygote. Okay. So it becomes the embryo and will eventually develop into a new individual. Okay, so from a zygote we have an embryo, then from an embryo becomes a fetus, which grows for 9 months in the womb of a woman or the uterus, and then after that a baby will be born after 9 months. Okay, right, so this is how it all happens. You have the sperm from the male testis finding its way during copulation into the female vagina, and it goes all the way to the ovaries, through the uterus, then to the ovaries of the female, and it reaches an egg where it fertilizes the egg. Okay, so this is the sperm and this is the egg. Then it fertilizes this egg And after fertilization, there's going to be a zygote that is formed. The zygote is formed after fertilization of the egg by the sperm. Okay. Then from there, that zygote will form many cells, and then it will become what? An embryo. Then the embryo will develop into a fetus, and that fetus will grow for 9 months, and after 9 months you will have a baby. Okay, you guys are lucky because you can learn about these things at school. Some of us, when we were young, our parents would tell us that babies were brought by aeroplanes. Okay, right. Okay, let's continue. Now let's talk about puberty. What is puberty? We said that puberty is the stage in the human life cycle when sexual organs mature for reproduction. It's a stage in the human life cycle when sexual organs mature for reproduction. Okay. So the sex organs, which are the ovaries and the testes, mature and become ready for sexual reproduction during puberty. So in girls, it begins between the ages of 8 and 13, and in boys, it begins between the ages of 9 and 14. Right. Now, let's talk about the pituitary gland. What is the pituitary gland? The pituitary gland is this small pea-shaped like gland that's located under your brain. So it initiates puberty, okay? It releases hormones into your bloodstream, and these hormones will trigger your sex organs, which in this case will be your testes and your ovaries. In boys, it triggers the testes to produce what? Testosterone. And in girls, it triggers the ovaries to produce estrogen. Right. Now, if you have a question for us, please remember to send it through to our WhatsApp line, which is 064-748-8913. That's 064-748-8913. Okay, let's continue. So the pituitary gland is found in the brain. It's at the bottom of the brain. And this is an illustration showing the pituitary gland. It's located there just under your brain. It is this gland that is responsible for releasing hormones into the bloodstream that trigger the sexual organs to start producing hormones for puberty. Right. So there you can see the pituitary gland just below the brain. Okay. And here's another illustration showing a slightly increased view of this pituitary gland. And this one is a very close view. So the pituitary gland looks just like that. It looks like a pea, okay? Right, and it's at the bottom of your brain. This is the brain, right? And the pituitary gland is just there at the bottom, okay? Right. So the pituitary gland is a structure found at the base of the brain, and it makes hormones that tell different organs what to do. But what are these hormones? Hormones are chemicals that are made by different glands in our bodies. And their role is to either speed up or slow down activities of our body organs. Remember, we learned about organs. Right? So the hormones, their role is to either speed up or slow down the activities of our organs. So as we said, that the pituitary gland releases hormones into the bloodstream, which triggers the testes and the ovaries to release sex hormones, which we know as testosterone in males and estrogen in females. So testosterone is released from the testes of the male. These are the testes. That's where testosterone is produced. And estrogen is produced from the ovaries of a female. Okay. Let's continue. Now let's talk about secondary sexual characteristics. So both this testosterone and this estrogen bring about changes into the body which we refer to as the secondary sexual characteristics. Okay, so the changes that occurs in your body during puberty are initiated by what? By either testosterone in males or estrogen in females. And the changes that occurs as a result of these hormones, we call it what? The secondary sexual characteristics. So in girls, you will see things like pimples and pubic hair, right? Those are examples of these secondary sexual characteristics, the changes that occurs in the body. Now, they are not limited to this, but these are the first two examples that I'm going to look at. You will see the appearance of pimples on your face, the appearance of pubic hair, and some acne, okay, on your skin, which is nothing but an ingrown hair that grows under your skin, causing it to form a pimple, okay? Right. Another example would be widened hips, more fat, menstruation, and some females will grow taller, but most females are short, okay? And you will start having even broader breasts, okay? Those are the secondary sexual characteristics in females, okay? Right. So here's another further illustration of these secondary sexual characteristics that occur in females. You will have breast growth, and this is between the ages of 8 and 13. You have pubic hair between the ages of 8 to 14. This is like the estimated time where you will start seeing these changes. Your body will mature or grow between the ages of 9 to 14. Then you will start having your first period, going through menstruation between the ages of 10 and 16. You start having some underarm hair between the ages of 10 and 16. And you will see some acne between the ages of 10 and 16. This is a summary of the secondary sexual characteristics of females. Right. Now let's look at what happens in boys. Boys will grow taller. They will develop some facial hair like a beard and a mustache. They will grow hair under their arms. Okay, this also happens in females as well. Pubic hair. And the voice will begin to get deeper. Okay, these are the secondary sexual characteristics in males. Okay, we said what? Facial hair, you grow taller, you get underarm hair, pubic hair, and your voice will begin to break and slowly get deeper. Okay, these are the secondary sexual characteristics in males. Now let's look at them in a more defined manner where we look at even the time period. So facial hair normally occurs between the ages of 11 to 20. Pubic hair will occur between the ages of 11 to 20. Genital growth, okay, your penis will grow between the ages of 13 and 16. The breaking of the voice or deeper voice between the ages of 11 and 15. Then you'll get an erection, okay, that starts at the age of 12. Then you will have growth and muscular appearance, okay. You start having like broader shoulders and a broader chest, okay, between the ages of 12 and 20. These are the secondary sexual characteristics that are possible in males. Okay. Right. So other changes that will occur as a result of these hormones in your body will be emotional changes. So emotional changes can also happen, which include mood swings or mood changes, low self-esteem, aggression, and depression. Okay. So mood swings is when you become very moody, and this is usually towards your parents, which is not a good thing, okay? Low self-esteem, you start doubting yourself, not being confident in yourself. You will start being aggressive, like you want to fight all the time, which is really not a good thing. and depression. Okay, you suffer from severe stress and anxiety as a result of puberty and the increased hormonal level in your body. Okay, right. So this is an example of someone that's moody, and this one will be someone that's aggressive. They just want to fight and break things and hit people all the time, which is not a good thing. Okay, if you are undergoing these things, please try to calm down and be reasonable with other people. Try to be more accepting of others. Okay, I understand it's a very tough thing because you have no control over this, but just try. Okay, let's continue. Now let's do an activity. Right. Number 1, describe how puberty is initiated and controlled by hormones. Number 2, read the following sentences. In the brackets are 2 words. One word in the brackets will make the sentence true. So these sentences are not true because they have 2 different words. You have to choose one. Write down the correct word only. Right. So a girl's breasts get bigger during puberty or menstruation. B, the testes or scrotum produce sperms in the mature male body. C, the urethra or ovaries produce egg cells in the mature female body. D, when the penis releases sperm into the vagina, this is known as ejaculation or pregnancy. And E, a condom or STD is a form of contraception. Okay, so you have 6 minutes to work on these easy questions, and your time begins now. All right, learners, welcome back. I hope you were able to answer those questions. Right. So right now we are going to take some time to go through the questions together. Right. So the first question says, describe how puberty is initiated and controlled by hormones. Let's quickly answer that question. What do you think? I'm very interested in your answers. What's your take on this? How is puberty initiated and controlled by hormones? Okay. So the first thing that happens is hormones are released from the pituitary gland into the bloodstream. Okay. Then those hormones, they activate or trigger the sex organs, namely the testes and the ovaries. The testes are found in a male and the ovaries are found in a female. Okay. So they trigger these organs to release sex hormones. Then after that, the testes will produce testosterone and the ovaries will produce what? Estrogen. Then these hormones, both the testosterone and the estrogen, will cause changes to occur in your body, such as menstruation if you're a female or a girl. You'll get breast development if you're a girl, pubic hair for both boys and girls, facial hair for boys, deepening of the male voice for boys. Now, this is not limited to this because you have other things such as the appearance of pimples, you have the emotional changes that we discussed earlier, and broader and widened shoulders and chest for boys, or muscular appearance in boys, and the taller height. Okay, right. But this is basically how puberty is initiated and controlled by hormones. Okay, I hope you were able to get these things correctly. I'm going to go through them again so that we all understand. So hormones are released from the pituitary gland into the bloodstream. These hormones will activate or trigger your sex organs. Your sex organs are the testes and the ovaries. Okay, so the testes will produce testosterone while the ovaries will produce estrogen, and both these hormones will bring about changes or secondary sexual characteristics in both male and female. And amongst the changes will be the following: there will be menstruation in girls, breast development, girls, pubic hair, both girls and boys, deepening of the voice in boys, broadened or widened shoulders and chest in boys, taller height in boys, and etc. Right. So the changes that occurs in the body are not limited to these ones. You can have others. For as long as they are correct, then you can mark yourself correct for your answers. Okay. Let's go on to question 2. Read the following sentences. In the brackets are 2 words. One word in the brackets will make the sentence true. Write down the correct word only. So you need to read the following sentences. In the brackets, there are 2 words, and one of the words in brackets will make the sentence true. So write down the correct word only. So the first one we had, a girl's breasts get bigger during puberty or menstruation. The testes or scrotum produce sperm in the mature male body. The urethra or ovaries produce egg cells in the mature female body. When the penis releases sperm into the vagina, this is known as ejaculation or pregnancy. And lastly, low self-esteem is an example of emotional or physical changes. Okay, so the last question, you can cancel the last question from the questions that you did, and we will do this one together because it's different. Right, so what do you think is the answer for question A, between puberty or menstruation? A girl's breasts get bigger during puberty or menstruation. Which one is the correct word? Yes, that's correct. That is puberty. Okay, so puberty is the correct word and menstruation is incorrect. Okay, I hope you were able to get that one correct. The testes or scrotum produce sperm in the mature male body. Which one is it? Is it the scrotum or is it the testes? Yes, that's correct. It is the testes. The scrotum is the bag that holds the testes. Okay, so the testes produce sperm in the mature male body. The urethra or ovaries produce egg cells in the mature female body. Okay, which one is the correct answer? Is it the urethra or the ovaries? What do you think? Yes, that's correct. It is the ovaries. The ovaries produce egg cells in the mature female body. D, when the penis releases sperm into the vagina, this is known as ejaculation or pregnancy. Which one is the correct word on this one? Okay, yes, that's true. It is ejaculation. Pregnancy is incorrect. Now this one we'll do it together because it was not part of the questions when I showed you first time. Low self-esteem is an example of emotional or physical changes. Which one is the correct word? What do you think? Let's do this one together. Low self-esteem is an example of emotional or physical changes. Okay, a low self-esteem is not a physical change, it is an emotional. It has to do with your emotions. So the correct word here is emotional. Low self-esteem is an example of emotional changes. So I hope you were able to get these questions correctly and understand why the answers that we chose were the correct ones. They should help you in your tests and your exams. Okay, now let's continue. Now let's summarize our lesson. We said that the main purpose of reproduction is for the gametes to combine for the continuation of the species. Okay, so the reason why people and animals and all living organisms reproduce, it is because they want to sustain their species. Okay, it's for the continuation of the species, to preserve their species, right? How does it happen? By the fusing of gametes. Gametes come together to combine and form new species to replace the ones that are dying and the ones that are old. Okay, so that there's always a population of that particular species. So gametes are the male and the female sex cells. Okay, whenever someone talks about gametes, they are referring to the female and the male sex cells. Okay, there are two types of reproduction. There is the asexual reproduction and the sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction has only one parent. Okay, there's only one parent in asexual reproduction, and the offspring or babies are identical to the parent. So what normally happens is the nucleus and the cytoplasm of the parent will split and form two nuclei and two cytoplasms. Okay, it basically splits into two cells which are identical. They're not different, they are identical. And if that cycle continues on and on and on, you will have many identical species. Okay, and we said an example of a asexual reproductive organism will be the amoeba. Okay, so in sexual reproduction we have two parents and they are obviously different from each other, so the offspring cannot be identical to the parent. Okay, so the parents have reproductive organs that produces sex cells or gametes, which are also known as the sperm cell and the egg cell. So in sexual reproduction, there must be a sperm and an egg, and then fertilization. If one of the two is missing, you will not have reproduction in sexual reproduction. Okay, right. And we said that puberty is the stage in the human life cycle when sexual organs mature for reproduction. Okay, so during puberty, the body is preparing itself for reproduction. All the changes that are occurring during puberty are in preparation for reproduction. Okay, but that doesn't mean that you should go around making babies. I can't emphasize that enough. Babies are expensive. You need to focus in school and do well and leave the making of babies to your parents and older people. Okay, right, so in girls, puberty begins between the ages of 8 and 13, and in boys it begins between the ages of 9 and 13. The pituitary gland, which is found at the bottom of your brain, has the job of releasing hormones that trigger the testes and the ovaries to release hormones into the bloodstream. So testosterone is one of the hormones that are released into the bloodstream by the testes of a male, right? And estrogen is the female hormone that is released into the bloodstream, and it's produced by what? The ovaries. Okay. Right. So now let's look at the brief preview in what's coming in our next lesson. So in our next lesson, we are going to be looking at the reproductive system. We will be looking at the reproductive organs. Now, the reproductive organs will be things like the penis, the vagina, the urethra, the uterus, and testis. Okay, right. So that lesson is going to be very interesting. Now, I want to take some time to go through your WhatsApp questions. Now, remember the WhatsApp line is 064-748-8913. That's 064-748-8913. Let's quickly go there to see what questions you have for us. Okay, let's see. Hey, I'm Hope from Kenneth Masekela. I just want to ask if my okay, this is not for this lesson. So the pituitary gland is found in the brain. Does it function in the human organs? Okay, right. So the pituitary gland is found in the brain, at the bottom of the brain, and its role is to release hormones into the bloodstream that trigger the sexual organs to start producing hormones that will bring about changes into your body. I'm going to repeat that because it might get confusing. The pituitary gland is located in your brain, and it releases hormones into the bloodstream that trigger or tells the sexual organs what to do. It tells them to produce hormones that are going to bring about changes in your body during puberty. So now think about this. The pituitary gland is like an instructor. It gives hormones and instruction to go and tell other people to start doing their work. Okay? I think that should make it more understandable. The pituitary gland releases hormones into the bloodstream, which tells the sexual organs to start producing hormones that will bring about changes in the body. What are these sexual organs? They are the testes in males, and they are the ovaries in females. And what are the hormones that bring about changes in the body? They are the testosterone in males, which is produced by the testes, and the estrogen, which is produced by the ovaries of females. So I hope you understand now the role or the function of the pituitary gland in this picture. And let's move on to the next question. Thank you for your question. Right, Kenneth Masekela. Right, let's look at another one. Okay. Please re-explain asexual reproduction. So asexual reproduction is a type of reproduction where there's only one parent. Right. So imagine you have a cell that breaks in half. It splits itself in half and forms two identical copies of itself. That's how asexual reproduction works. You have a cell that replicates and forms two copies of itself, and the other one will be the offspring, the other one will be the parent, but they are identical to each other. So an example of an organism that undergoes asexual reproduction is an amoeba. The nucleus of the cell of an amoeba will break into two together with the cytoplasm, forming two different cells. Sorry, they are not different, they are identical. It forms two identical cells. So in other words, you can't really tell which one was the parent and which one is the offspring or the baby in asexual reproduction because they are identical to each other, both the parent and the baby. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Second question says, from the same person, what do hormones do exactly? So what hormones do is they are first released into your bloodstream, and their role is to tell your organs inside your body what to do. They tell them how to do their activities, either to slow them down or to speed up. For instance, let's look at the testes and the ovaries because we were dealing with those in our lesson. So in the case of the testes and the ovaries, hormones will tell them that, okay, I want you to produce testosterone, but I want you to do it quicker or slower, and I want this much. And you see, they regulate how much of that testosterone must be produced or how fast it must be produced. That's the role of the hormones. And the same applies with the ovaries. They will tell them, okay, I want this much estrogen and I want you to do it slowly or I want you to do it fast. Okay, that's what hormones do. They tell the organs how to do their activities. They either speed them up or slow them down. Hormones themselves are the chemicals which are produced by glands inside our bodies. There are many glands, and in this lesson we just learned about one, which is the pituitary gland located in the brain, which releases hormones, right? And these hormones are chemicals that tells our organs what to do and how to do it, either faster or slower, and they regulate how much of that particular function is produced. Okay, so thank you for your question. Who's this? That's Kenneth Masikela. Okay. Oh, sorry, it's Miyanda from Kenneth Masikela. My bad. I apologize for that. Okay. Here's another question. Ejaculation happens when sperm is released on the penis. Yes, when sperms are released from the penis, we call that ejaculation. Thank you for your question. Right, so where's the other one? Okay, let's see here. What do we have? Okay, there's a question which says, which gland initiates puberty? Puberty is initiated by the pituitary gland. Okay, it is this gland that tells the body to release hormones into the bloodstream, and those hormones will trigger the sex organs to start producing the hormones which are responsible for the secondary sexual characteristics, such as your estrogen in females and testosterone in males. Thank you for your question. Now that looks like we've answered all the questions that we had. Right, let's go back to our lesson. Right, so when you get to the end of this video, please scroll to the bottom and click on complete and continue so that we will know that you did watch the lesson from beginning to end, and you will get bonus points for doing that. Right, that being said, that brings us to the end of our lesson. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure hosting you for this lesson on puberty. I hope you learned something about puberty and the pituitary gland and its role in triggering the release of hormones that end up triggering the testes and the ovaries to bring about all of these secondary sexual characteristics that we are observing in our bodies in our teenage years. Right. Now, what I need you to do from here is please take care of yourself, wear your mask, sanitize your hands, and keep your distance and keep running in zigzag and confuse this virus. and keep safe until we meet again for our next lesson. My name is Kwanele Dlamini, and it's been a pleasure hosting you for this lesson. And remember, this lesson was proudly brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education. Thank you so much for tuning in, and keep safe.